Joining us now is Congressman Jay Inslee, a Democrat from Washington and one of the strongest proponents of the energy legislation moving today on the House floor. Before we go to Congressman Inslee, we want to go to a clip of President Barack Obama at his Thursday press conference talking about the importance of Congress coming together to pass this legislation.
Now I urge every member of Congress, Democrat and Republican, to come together to support this legislation. I can't stress enough the importance of this vote. I know this is going to be a close vote, in part because of the misinformation that's out there that suggests there's somehow a contradiction between investing in clean energy and our economic growth. But my call to those members of Congress who are still on the fence, as well as to the American people, is this: we cannot be afraid of the future, and we can't be prisoners of the past. We've been talking about this issue for decades, and now's the time to finally act.
I also want to refer to a recent editorial you wrote in your hometown paper, the Seattle Times, where you likened what's going on in Congress right now to the Apollo project that took us to the moon. You write, "My colleagues may not have recalled the first Apollo project as they set a cap on carbon and set national goals for clean electricity production, but having called for a new Apollo energy project 7 years ago, I saw the similarities between the two innovation revolutions. Last time we went to the moon. This time our technological genius and entrepreneurial zeal will turn to the task of saving this planet." Why does Congress need to pass this legislation?
Well, the reason is that we have the same source of energy that we did in the Apollo project, which is the American spirit of innovation, of entrepreneurship, of a can-do spirit. And although we are in a recession right now, in very difficult economic times, we ought to have confidence in ourselves that we can innovate to really be the arsenal of clean energy for the world. And what I see this as an enormous economic opportunity, because we know the world is going to be demanding these clean energy technology sources. So when I think of this bill, I think of the people who will have new clean energy careers at Bright Source Energy doing concentrated solar energy, the people at Clipper Wind Company in Iowa who are going to be building and installing wind turbines, and the people at McKinstry Company out in Washington, which are showing companies how to save energy on their computer networks. So when I think of this as an economic opportunity that we need to seize and we can seize. And as I listen to some of my colleagues talk about this, I really think this is a little bit of a debate between the optimists and the pessimists. The pessimists think we've sort of lost our edge, that we can't beat China in the race to build lithium-ion batteries, that we can't beat Germany in the race to build solar technology. We're the people who went to the moon, and I still believe we have the right stuff. It's also a little bit of a debate between those who are satisfied with the status quo, which I am not, and those who believe that we have a brighter future if we in fact adopt aggressive, proactive American solutions to this problem. And this bill, I think, is an American solution because it is based, number one, on innovation, number two, on optimism, and number three, on a system that was invented in America and perfected in America, which is this system of limiting pollution and charging polluters for the right to pollute. And we did this with acid rain, and it cut pollution in half, and it cost us half as much as the people who are now squalling about this say this is going to cost. And the reason it cost half as much is because of the geniuses who are starting businesses, sometimes in their garages as we speak around this country, who are developing the technologies that can do this at a reasonable cost for us. And this is a very reasonable cost of a postage stamp a day. And I needed to ask my Republican colleagues to take a deep breath here, look at the evidence, look at what we've done in the bill to ameliorate costs for Americans, and look at the Congressional Budget Office, which is really the referee on this, and concluded that this would cost Americans 47 cents a day. And if we can, in fact, get rid of 5 million barrels of gasoline, which this bill will do, which we're now importing from OPEC companies, and free ourselves from that addiction, if it can restrain global warming gases, which are today melting the glaciers in Glacier National Park and threatening our coastline and killing our forests. I'm from the Wenatchee National Forest in Washington, and the trees are dying by the thousands of acres. We can do something about that. And third, and most importantly, we can get in the global race for these green-collar, clean energy career jobs. And that's what this bill is going to do. The status quo is not good enough.
We're talking with Congressman Jay Inslee, a Democrat from Washington, about the energy bill moving through the House floor today. On the Republican line, you can call in on 202-737-0001. On the Democratic line, 202-737-0002. And on the independent line, 202-628-0205. Congressman, you're a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee. You've authored a lot of amendments that have affected this legislation. What are some of, we've heard a lot about cap and trade, but what are some of the key components of this bill that may be lesser known that you think are important?
Well, it is a comprehensive bill, and I think that's important. We tried to design a bill that would take care of all the regions of the country, all of the industries of the country, and ameliorate costs associated with going forward. And I think we were successful. I'll give you some of them. Number one, Mike Doyle and I added an amendment that would prevent job leakage. We don't want to see our jobs go to China if China does not adopt a vigorous climate control system. So we built into the bill a provision to help steel workers and aluminum workers and pulp and paper workers that they will receive 15% of all of the allocations in this bill, which will prevent any job loss from going overseas associated with this program. That also acts as a spur to other nations, to join our lead and follow our lead. And we are the leader of the world still, and we ought to lead on this. So it acts as a spur to them to act. Second, we have a provision that will essentially recycle the money that comes back from the polluters. Basically, this is a system where we limit pollution, which we've been very successful in doing, and we make the polluting industries pay for permits to acquire that. Then we recycle that money back to consumers in several ways. First, 35% of all the value of this will go back to consumers through the utilities that are regulated utilities. They will be required to get this money back to consumers in a variety of ways. Rate reductions to help consumers insulate their homes, get energy efficient, refrigerators and washers and the like. Second, we have a provision for the bottom 20% of Americans, the lower quintile. They will receive assistance directly in tax credits and actually help through some of our other systems to insulate them from any cost whatsoever. At all. So they'll be totally insulated from costs in that regard. We also have a provision that's very important, which is the Renewable Electrical Standard, which will basically guarantee Americans that we'll have 15% of our electricity from clean renewable sources by the year 2020, and that we will have help obtaining 5% more efficiency in how we use energy, because we always know the cheapest energy is always the energy we don't waste. And we know there's boatloads of energies if we get a little help getting, insulation in our homes and caulking our windows and have energy efficient appliances. So this is a very important provision. Third, we have a robust, and I hope will even be more robust when the bill is done, research and development component, so that we can help businesses to develop. And by the way, this is going to be driven by the private sector of the United States. There is some governmental research and development, but 95% of the innovation and 95% of the research and 95% of the great ideas are going to be developed by businessmen and women in this country. And I've got to know these people over the years, wrote a book about energy, and I got to know all these people. And you are stunned. You can't turn over a rock in this country without finding a business person with a great idea. And they're out there today. So we put in a green bank. We're calling it a green bank. It's got a fancy title that Congressman made up, but we're calling it a green bank that will essentially help finance those business people in their first commercial project. They have what's called a valley of death. They get a great idea. They build a prototype in their garage or their neighbor's warehouse. Then they need financing to get it into commercial applications. So we have a green bank to help them across that valley of death. So yes, it is a comprehensive bill, and it is regionally balanced. We are a diverse country. I come from a hydro-dependent state in the state of Washington. We have a lot of areas that depend on coal-fired electricity. We have designed a whole host of mechanisms to insulate and ameliorate those that are in coal-dependent parts of the country from price shocks. One of which is called a banking mechanism, so that people can put in the bank these permits to prevent the price from swinging too rapidly. We have the most aggressive regulatory system on this market. We finally are regulating derivatives. It's about time, isn't it, to not let Wall Street run amok again. So we've put a lot of fail-safe mechanisms in there, airbags, if you will, to help people. But the bottom line is this, and we just got to get to the bottom line. I know people are concerned with costs. None of us want to pay a penny if we don't have to. But I think that in looking at it with economic sense, as the Congressional Budget Office did, they concluded it would cost Americans 47 cents a day. It's about just a little bit more than a postage stamp. And I have yet to find anyone who believes that if we can solve the problem of our loss of jobs, which we are experiencing today, if we can free ourselves from dependence on Middle Eastern oil so we don't have to even worry about fighting wars over oil, if we can give our grandkids a fighting chance of having forests and salmon in the rivers and glaciers and coastline in Florida where we now have it, that's worth 47 cents a day. Now, I think Democrats believe that. I believe Republicans believe that. I believe independents believe that. And the question is, you know, will it or won't it? All I know is I'm following the economic people who are the referees. They're not Republicans or Democrats who've looked at this model. Now, the reason we've been able to keep that cost down is because we've adopted so many measures in the bill to insulate consumers from price hikes in this regard. That's why I'm happy about this result.
Okay, well, let's hear from our callers. Our first call is on the Democratic line from Pratt, Wisconsin. Marjorie?
Pratt, West Virginia.
Oh, West Virginia. I'm sorry.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Please be patient with me. I'm very ill.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm sorry that I am, but thank you. So it takes me a little bit of time to get my thoughts
Take your
together.
time.
One of my illnesses does have to do with environmental problems. And I do live in West Virginia where we do value our ability to mine coal because of the need for jobs, and
You bet.
it's only good-paying jobs. Walmart is basically our biggest employer here, but I am very much concerned with the environment. I watched hearings a year or maybe 2 years ago, Congress held, about the incandescent and the fluorescent light bulbs, and how that would save us energy if we would go to the fluorescent bulbs. However, because of the nature of my illness, I am very allergic to fluorescent bulbs. I need the incandescent. When I watched that hearing, I called several members of Congress and asked them if some kind of revision could be made in whatever bill comes up that would give people like me the choice to choose whether I want incandescent or fluorescent.
Right. I think I have some good news for you. Number one, the science is rapidly developing new types of lighting, LED lighting, and I just recently went to a DuPont lab where I saw the development of LED lighting, which was much more efficient than either of those types of light that we believe can be very commercially viable in the next few years. And our bill essentially will allow that and encourage that, and that's one of the things in the bill are appliance standards so that we will receive more efficient lighting and heating systems than Americans and save us money. By the way, this bill can save us enormous amounts on our household energy bills. 20 to 30% easily are available for very, very modest investments that clearly pay off over 3 or 4 years. And this bill will help Americans. $9 billion a year, this bill will go to Americans through states and cities to help get these type of efficiency lightings to help them save energy. And let me just note on coal, we have helped the continuation of coal, but coal that does not destroy the atmosphere. We have $1 billion a year to help the coal industry perfect a sequestration technique, sequestration 25-cent word for putting it in the ground and keeping it in the ground so it doesn't go in the atmosphere and destroy the climate. And the coal industry could have a future long-term if we perfect this technology. So we've built in systems to help coal-based regions to keep their jobs going. And I may add, this bill is very eclectic in the energy sources that it can allow to develop. That includes nuclear. Nuclear can be part of this mix. And a cap-and-trade system does help the development by making all low and zero CO2 systems cost competitive. I'm sorry you feel badly. One of the reasons we're doing this bill is so more people do not have to have the illnesses associated with climate change. And if people are interested in this, there was a very disturbing report issued by the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration last week at the White House. Jane Lubachenko, who's the new head of it, released it. There are some things about our health. This is not just about ascetics and polar bears. The polar bears are great, But this is about us and our neighbors and our kids, whether they're going to have respiratory diseases associated with this problem, whether they're going to have heat-related health issues associated with this problem. This, over the long term, is a health issue, and for postage stamps a day, I think your health is worth it.
On the Republican line, we have Charles from Bella Vista, Arkansas.
Jay, China is opening a coal-fired plant one a week.
You bet.
And also Russia's a mess.
Right.
Eastern Europe is a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to loan them money so they can clean up. We're 40 times cleaner than we were the last 35 years. We're doing a damn good job right now without spending all this money. The gentleman that wrote the computer program for global warming, he's the one that says his program is flawed. He doesn't believe in it anymore. But yet we're spending money on something that is still not proven, regardless of what you say or your other people that started this says. Now, have you read all 1,500 pages of the program that you're going to vote on today?
Didn't just read it.
I want to know for sure.
Didn't
Did you read 1,500 pages of the program?
Didn't just read it, wrote it. Wrote the bill, major parts of it, wrote a book on this subject, and spent a week in China 2 weeks ago talking to the Chinese about how we're going to no longer give them the excuse for inaction by our inaction. You know, China, essentially, we are not going to allow them anymore, or any country for that matter, put the excuse out that we're not going to act when America, that is one of the 2 largest polluters in the planet, has not acted. You know, I'll just tell you what I believe about America. I believe we are, by destiny and by value system, the leaders of the world. We did not wait for China to adopt the Bill of Rights and freedom of speech and freedom of religion until we did. We did not wait for the Chinese to go to the moon. We led the world and we went. Now what we need to do is to remove any excuse the Chinese or the Indians or the Russians have for inaction in this regard. And I'm hopeful that in October we will have a bilateral agreement where China will make commitments to us about what they are going to do to solve this problem. And you are entirely right. They are building 1 coal-fired plant a week, and if they do not restrain that, the world is going to be cooked. So we have to do what we can do to compel their action. And here's the 2 things we can do. Number 1, we can act, which we're going to do today in Congress. Number 2, our business community can build technologies which we are going to sell to them. The Ramgen company, which is a company in Bellevue, Washington, may be selling them clean coal technology. The Bright Source concentrated solar energy, we're going to sell them products and ship money back here and products to the West. I'm getting tired of seeing ships coming in low in the water in Seattle full of Chinese products. And when they go back, they're high in the water and they're empty. I want to start putting American products in those ships and shipping them to China. And there is going to be a giant market there for clean energy technology. But here is the question. We saw in China 2 weeks ago an electric car plant they're building, a solar cell development system they're building, a wind turbine system that they are building. We are in a race to determine whether those products will be made in China or whether they will be made in the United States. This bill will enhance the prospect that those jobs will be in America. And I am proud to tell you that one of the investments that I was responsible of getting in the last bill was a $2 billion investment in lithium-ion batteries. This is the key to the future of the car. We are going to be building at least partially and driving partially electric cars here in the next decade or 2. And I want those batteries made in Michigan and Massachusetts and maybe Washington State. That's a future for this country to build our economy. And I've learned one thing. If you do not want to believe in the science of global warming, nothing is going to convince you. But having read the IPCC report, having seen tens of thousands of acres of forest 100 miles from my house dead because the beetles are killing them because the weather is too warm now to kill the beetles in the winter, having seen the glaciers essentially disappear during my little tiny lifetime of 58 years, we don't have a choice. We got to act.
On the independent line, Larry from Clinton, Missouri.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Sir, I do not know Now, you can sit there and look the American people in the face and tell them that this is not the biggest tax increase that we have ever had. You can say no taxes. Who's going to get the money from cap and tax?
Well, you will get
the because you have put us in so much debt with all of these idiotic things that you keep putting forward to the American people. The people that's going to hurt the worst is the poor people in the United States who can't afford to pay the bills. They can't even afford to pay the bills they have now. And I've been working on this for several months with my electricity company in Clinton, Missouri, who is a coal-fired plant, who has spent $8 million in the last year to bring whatever you're talking about down, okay? As an older person in the United States who is 70 years old, I would hope to heck that I would never live long enough to see the American government, which is us, not you, but us. We pay the bills so you can have a job. Your job is paid for by us. Now it's time for you to step up to the plate and say, no, this is time for the American people to step up to the plate and say, we are tired of being taxed, taxed, taxed. And that's all you guys know how to do, is spend and tax. It's not just Democrats, it's Republicans, it's all of you guys. You come up with this idea, and this idea has been hanging around for a while.
Well, we've actually, thanks for your call, and congratulations on 70 years. You've seen a lot of change in your lifetime, and a lot of good things develop. And a lot of the things because we got together as a country and decided to do them. We went to the moon, we developed jet aircraft, we developed software, and we did it because we made some investments in our future, and we did it during your lifetime because we were confident in our ability to do these things. Now, I'm very confident that we can do the things to keep any rate increases very, very low in this regard, and I'll tell you why. Number one of the things you said, and I encourage you to read the bill, it will be online. One of the things you said, the good news, I can tell you, will not come to pass. People who are low income in this country, people who are high income in this country, might have to pay a postage stamp a day, according to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which is frequently cited by my Republican colleagues. A postage stamp a day. So I, at my income level, will have to pay a postage stamp a day to save the planet from a scourge that we're dealing and to grow jobs like we're going to do. But people who are earning in the bottom quintile, the low-income folks of this country, we have assured them, and I can assure you that they will not pay a penny for this in the long run, because we are recycling the money back to those low-income folks. I may also want to add that this money, except for 15% of it, essentially isn't going into the general treasury of the United States. 15% of it's coming into the treasury and going right back out to the low-income people that I talked about. The rest of the value of this program is going to your utility. It is going to your utility. And that utility, by law, will be required to recycle the value of that back to you in ways to keep your rates low, in ways to help insulate your home, in ways to help you get an energy-efficient washer or dryer. That's going to be recycled back to you. And we could go through the list of where else it goes. But this money basically is required to go back into the U.S. economy. It isn't going to be subject to the appropriations of Congress. And here's one of the other things that, frankly, I think is very good in this bill. This money is not subject to Congress appropriating it. It is all designated where it is going to go back to the American people. That means that congressmen and women cannot go in there and redirect this money to any particular project or any particular purpose. We have assured ourselves and our constituents that it will be used for these specific purposes. I think it's a real wholesome thing in this bill.
Let's take our last call from Christine on the Democratic line in Halifax, Pennsylvania.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
I am an American voter who strongly believes in the science of global warming, and I truly hope you can get this passed. I am calling because of a conversation I had with a staffer at my representative's office, Tim Holden, and he's a Democrat, and he's apparently against this, and I called to find out why. And I was told that the cap and trade would devastate the agriculture and the coal industry of his district. And I said, well, how would that happen? I said, is it because they're such huge polluters? And he said, yeah, frankly, that's it. I also asked how Representative Holden considered himself a Democrat when he was going to go against this bill, and I said, has he listened to any other voices other than his, campaign funders? And the staffer told me that the people that he's protecting aren't even supporters of him. They're mostly Republicans. So it's very frustrating that my representative might be holding this up. And
well, Tim is a great guy and a great Democrat and a great congressman, and don't hold anything one of his staffers or interns told you against him if it was unfortunate. There's going to be some Democrats voting against this bill, and there are concerns in some of these regions. I can tell you that the efforts to make sure that coal regions of the country were led by Rick Boucher, who is essentially one of the most coal-dependent regions of the country from Virginia, and we built into the bill very significant provisions, as I talked about, $1 billion research fund for coal sequestration, very, very large allocations of these, to my detriment, frankly. I'm from a hydro-dependent place in Washington, but all these permits are going to the coal-dependent regions of utilities. That wasn't so happy in my region of the world, but it's in the bill, and I'm going to vote for the bill because we are going to help these communities that are coal-dependent utilities to make sure that they do not have job loss, and I'm confident that's going to be the case so that we can find a way to use coal cleanly. You may have also talked to this person in Tim's office before we struck an agreement to have major amendments to the bill that were very helpful to the agricultural community. The ag community in this country has a bright future in developing bioenergy sources, particularly the advanced forms of cellulosic energy, algae-based energy, some advanced forms of ethanol. And these advanced forms give ag tremendous job opportunities. And we struck just 2 days ago an agreement with the agricultural chairman that have made advances that have now allowed about 20, 25 members who represent farm communities to embrace this bill. They're confident now this bill is going to help them. And they know, frankly, there's some bad things out there in farm community. When Iowa starts to look a little bit more like Michoacan, Mexico than Iowa, when Kansas has 6 months of 90-degree days, which the NOAA report indicated they will have by 2080, that's not good for agriculture. Progressive folks in agriculture understand that inaction is not a solution here. We need to act, we need to embrace innovation, and we need to get on the job of Americans leading the world to save us and the planet, and we're going to do that starting today.
Well, we'll leave it at that. Congressman, thank you for joining us.
You bet. Thank you.
We'll be back with Governor Luis Fortuño, a Republican from Puerto Rico, to talk about health care and other issues. We'll be right back.
As this year's Supreme Court term comes to an end, hear Chief Justice Roberts talk about the court's work. Then a panel of experienced court watchers, including Linda Greenhouse, Jan Crawford Greenberg, and Ted Olson, review the decisions handed down this past year. Live coverage on C-SPAN Saturday morning at 9 Eastern. This week saw the release of more than 150 hours of secret audio